Pledging allegiance to this church of diversity, celebrating our skin-deep differences. Looking around this room, great, I see a bunch of different shades of melanin. I see different genders, 2 of them, to be precise. And that's great. We are diverse. So what? It means nothing unless there is something greater that unites us across that diversity. I think about it. Without that, what are we? We're just a bunch of blobs of mass, 2 legs, higher mammals, walking some geographic space with a bunch of different shades of tans, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. That's not America. America is a vision of what that place can be, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and embodied in the U.S. Constitution. That's who we are. That's what it's going to require to save this country. It worked 250 years ago. Speak the truth without fear. Do it without apology. It's what I tried to do all last year. Got myself in trouble. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it. God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. The climate change agenda is a hoax, and I'm not afraid to say it. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family isn't a bad word. It is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism isn't something you apologize for. It lifts us up from poverty. There's 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And our U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We stand for the truth. We fight for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the rest of the free world. And if we revive that dream, those common ideals that unite us, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not some virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what you are going to revive to save this great country. Thank you all for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Do not stop fighting until you get this job done. This country is worth saving. I am counting on you to do it for us and for our children. Thank you, guys. Let's open this up. Thank you. God bless. USA, 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 USA. Let's open this up. Get the microphones going on. I want to hear from you guys.
We're going to have 2 lines.
Good. Start right up here.
You're going to go right.
Can we sing Happy Birthday for Trump?
Why not?
All right, on your right first.
Okay, my name is Maya Conrad, and I ran to be a delegate at large in Tennessee for Trump, and I won. Although I won, I faced removal by members of my own party due to me being 19 years old. Thankfully, I am still going to the RNC and have been appointed to the Rules Committee. So with that, I'd like to ask, how do you propose we navigate a party that at times doesn't welcome us because we supposedly lack gravitas due to our age?
I do it the other way around. I mean, the reality is, so look, I was no friend of the party apparatus of the Republican Party when I ran over the course of the last year. You probably noticed that. They weren't particularly thrilled with me at times for speaking some hard truths on the debate stage, but you know what? That's what it's going to take. So is that shameful? And is that part of the problem of the way our movement has operated for the last 30 years? Of course it is. But in the same way, you know, I took the spirit for me last year, and I would give the same thing to you. It's the spirit of our founding fathers. You know what? Too bad. We're going to show up, and we're going to be heard just like you did it, right? You're not going to stop just because somebody told you that you got disqualified. You're going to see that through and make sure your voice is heard, because you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for our country. You're doing it for your generation, the people who are going to be around long after the prior generation that wants you to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told. Long after they're dead and gone, it's going to be you who bear the burdens of what we bequeath you, the national debt, growing at a rate we haven't seen in our national history. Whose shoulders is that falling on? Not the people who spent the money who are dead and gone, but on your shoulders on whom it falls. World War III, God forbid we enter it. The current leadership, frankly, from people in both parties, is driving us into probably the greatest risk of World War III that I've seen in my lifetime. You want to know who's going to be in somebody else's trench with somebody else's gun over your shoulder fighting it with that national debt on the other shoulder? It's your generation. So somebody who tells you to, you know what, wait your turn and get in line and do it 30 years from now, you can listen to him and tell him thank you very much for your advice, but I'm showing up and I'm going to be heard right now because it's my generation who's affected by it. I think I'm going to do it just like our founding fathers did. And if Alexander Hamilton wasn't too young at the age of 24, neither am I today. That's my answer to you. And I have your back. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's why I'm here. Thank you. We'll come over here.
Hi, my name is Gwen Andrews. I'm from Georgia, and I've been struggling to get my dad a Father's Day present. So is there any way I could get a video of you saying, hey, Billy, happy Father's Day?
Amen. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
What's your name? Gwen?
Gwen.
Gwen. Hey, Billy. Billy?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Billy, happy Father's Day. You've raised a brave daughter to come up here who cares about her dad. And you know what? If we have more daughters like Glenn and more kids like Glenn, I'm raising 2 sons. And if I'm as successful in raising them, they're 4 and soon to be 2, as you were in raising your daughter, then I'm going to be a lucky parent, and our country's best days are going to be ahead of us. Happy Father's Day. Thank you.
Well, I would first like to thank you for coming here today. But on National Trump Day, I just want to wish the next president of the United States happy birthday.
Happy birthday, DJT.
But my question is more focused on foreign policy, specifically what's going on now with Cuba. So I'm a Cuban immigrant. My parents immigrated to this country when I was 2 years old. You know, my 2 brothers are here. Like, most of my family is here. But my question to you is regarding the situation going on now with Cuba. Do you think the United States should do anything about it? And I guess the follow-up would be, should the United States help Cuba in any way free themselves from communism?
So I'm going to give you, this could be a whole hour spent on this particular narrow topic, but I'll give you one principle here. So I believe the closer you are to representing a threat to the homeland of the United States of America, the higher priority it should be for our national defense establishment. And the trend I've seen in the last 30 years in this country, certainly for all of my adult life, post-2000, both parties responsible for this, I mean, you could go from all the way from George Bush onwards, is actually they look at it backwards. There's a greater priority of our own national defense resources and military resources and intelligence resources spent on conflicts that have the least to do with protecting our own homeland, while we're spending too little of our resources in actually defending the citizens of this country, say against the invasion on our own southern border. It's an abdication of duty. It's a dereliction of responsibility. So in that vein, as it relates to Cuba, here's what I prioritize. There's a Chinese spy base in Cuba right now, spying on the conversations of largely the eastern corridor, if not east of the Mississippi of the United States of America. There are Russian military presence in Cuba, as well as in Venezuela and Nicaragua. Now, I'm of the view that we need to end this war in Ukraine instantly and to be able to deliver a peaceful solution that stops us from marching our way into World War III. But part of that deal is going to require Russia to do certain things in return, including getting their military presence out of our own Western Hemisphere, because if it's near the United States of America, we're not going to tolerate with you threatening us or lording over us a military risk or threat. And so that's what our existing foreign policy establishment has gotten totally backwards. And I do think it's going to take a new generation of actual leadership in both parties to be able to say the first and sole moral duty of U.S. elected leaders is actually to, radical idea here, is actually to U.S. citizens. And once we restore that, our foreign policy matches what our country is actually supposed to be run on. That's what true America First is all about. And I would look at Cuba through that same lens. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Vivek for Secretary of State.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Hey, Vivek. My name's Evan. I'm from Fresno City College, president of our chapter. I wanted to ask you about an issue I've been having with some of my conservative colleagues that aren't in Turning Point. I have this issue where We have, for the first time in a long time, a dynamic and a change in narrative to where Hispanic and Black, who were historically Democratic voters, are willing to switch because of the border crisis, inflation, and crime. But some of my colleagues are sold on demographics as destiny, that they aren't the traditional conservative vote and that they won't make the switch. They're just going to do it until they get another handout that may distract them from the larger goal of America and getting us back to where we need to be. What would I say to some of these colleagues that they are conservative, they're faith and flag, but they're just lost on that these demographics are lost?
Yeah, look, I think that we live in a shifting landscape where just because somebody has a particular shade of melanin or somebody's a particular race, that doesn't govern what they actually believe. In fact, I could think of no idea more racist than to say that I can predict something about the content of your beliefs based on the color of your skin. So a lot of Black Americans have taken a big step back and said, I went to the south side of Chicago, for example, during my own campaign. And you know what, were there some disagreements in that room? There were. It was actually a line just like this one where a woman asked me a question about racial reparations, what my position was. I said I was dead set against it, which is my honest position. I'm not going to tell that audience anything different than I would tell all of you. She turned around right there while in the middle of delivering an answer, just like you're standing here, and walked straight out. And so did 3 other people in that room. Few other people were booing. Fine. We get later into the discussion. Then I get a guy who comes up to me, he thinks I'm a Republican and somehow I'm in favor of this, is why on earth are we sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, where there's good evidence that that money is actually being used for corrupt purposes at that time, when we're struggling here on the south side of Chicago without getting basic services that we need as citizens? And I said, you know what, I'm against that. Okay, we found a lot of common cause there. In fact, more so than in many traditional Republican rooms. And then you had other people in that room who came up who were concerned about the fact they were converting South Shore High School on the south side of Chicago into an encampment for migrants at $7,000 per illegal migrant per month, when people in that community are rightly asking, what about me? And so I think our message is and should be, America First includes all Americans, actually. That's who we are. I don't care about your race. I don't care about your creed. If you're a citizen of this country and you pledge allegiance to this country, then the leadership of this country pledges allegiance back to you. And that message, I think, is going to bring Hispanic to Black, to man to woman, to gay to straight, out to a very different type of vote than they've cast in the past. And that's an opportunity we have this year. So great question. I'm counting on you to help deliver it, man.
Vivek 2028.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Hello, Vivek. My name's Harry. I go to Suffolk University in Boston, Massachusetts. I love the topic we're talking about right now, so I'm going to keep rolling with it. I first off want to thank you for being the voice, being the anti-war voice in the Republican Party. We don't have enough anti-war candidates. And I think you are like one of the only folks on the right who I agree with on this issue, but I sort of want to get your thoughts. I asked this question yesterday, too. Why is it that we have so many on the right, like
Nikki Birdbrain Haley? Big impression.
Thank you. We've got so many on the right that are just so dead set on blank checks to Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan. And like being from Massachusetts, our own governors, like you said, starting to rent out hotels for illegals. Why is America First such a controversial idea on the right?
Well, look, I think it's a controversial idea in both parties, in both ends of the political spectrum, but it is included on the right as well. Let me give you guys use this as an opportunity to lay out what I see as a bird's eye view of not just what the next 4 years looks like, but where our movement is heading over the next 10 to 20 years. So the first rift on the right is the one that you're putting your finger on. Okay, it's the rift between what I call the old Dick Cheney vision of conservatism, believing in a... I won't interrupt anybody booing for that. But, you know, I mean, let's just get to the essence of the view, is that it's the job of the United States to serve as the global policeman, and it is perfectly acceptable to use a surveillance state in the United States to accomplish that objective domestically, even if it infringes around the edges of these things we call pesky constitutional rights. All right, that's an old vision of the Republican Party. Make no mistake, many Republicans who will spout off on cable television on evening about the importance of stopping the weaponization of government are indeed the ones still voting for greater weaponization of government by expanding FISA 702. And by the way, it's not a reauthorization of FISA 702. It was an expansion of FISA 702. So that's the first rift of that neocon wing of the movement versus our America First wing, which says that, you know what, the first and sole moral duty is to the citizens of our country. The people we elect to run the government should run the government, not unelected bureaucrats. And that, you know what, we do believe in the Constitution. And that we do believe it. Just because the left opposed the Iraq War and stood for civil liberties back then doesn't mean they were wrong. We stand for those principles against left-wing or any other overreach today. That's the first rift. Now I'm going to go to the second one just to play this forward a little bit, because I think this is going to be really interesting. I don't think it's going to play out this year. I don't think this year is the time for it. But you guys are young, right? So you're thinking on a longer time horizon. Where does the America First movement go from there? And I think there's going to be a further healthy policy rift among allies, amongst people who respect one another and can collegially debate this, but I do think there are some different competing visions that we haven't smoked out yet, and I think might as well see it rather than sweeping over those differences. On one hand, you're going to see, I think, a movement that goes the direction of saying that we believe in using the tools of government to accomplish goals that we believe are worth achieving. What you call industrial policy, favoring certain industries over others because we can know that those industries actually matter. Banning things that we think are bad. TikTok, whatever it is, that we're going to issue a blanket ban. And then you're going to have, I think, what I think is a more libertarian wing of the America First movement. I'm biased, but I'm laying out where I think the rift is, which says that, you know what? Part of what it meant to be American in the first place is that we did not want that government dictating how I live my life. Yes, I believe in national pride. I'm not a Libertarian Party libertarian. I believe in national pride, national boundaries, but within that, we believe in constitutional boundaries that keep our government at bay. And that, I think, is the true long-run future, even within America First. Which part of America First is really going to guide this country forward? It's going to be this libertarian nationalist alliance that is the way of the future, rather than using the tools of the left to try to, in the short run, accomplish our own objectives. That's what I believe. It's a great question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma. I go to Lake Creek High School in Montgomery, Texas. And you have obviously voiced your concerns about social media before. And my question is, since social media is one of the biggest problems in our country in spreading propaganda with things like Project 2025 and what's going on in Israel, what advice would you have to take back control of the younger generation? Because social media isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, so here's a couple things I would say is, it's a good nuance that I can add to my answer to the last question. I'm a libertarian when it comes to adults. Kids are not the same as adults. So you want to get serious about this is, I think social media usage under the age of 16, for the same reasons we say cigarettes can't be used under the age of 18, that's a pretty legitimate policy that I think we as pro-American patriots ought to actually support for the next generation. Now, here's the number one issue with social media that we haven't really covered is the government using private parties to get done through the back door what the government couldn't get done through the front door under the Constitution. So it gets into the little bit of a thorny subject here, the TikTok debate. But you want to pick one way social media companies have protected China against accountability for the origin of COVID-19. It was the systematic suppression of anybody who said on social media, YouTube to Facebook, that the origin of the pandemic was in China. Now, the irony is the companies doing that were U.S. companies responding to the threats of the U.S. government. And I think that raises the question for our moment. The challenge that your generation is going to face is, what happens when the greatest threats to the United States of America rest within the United States of America? That's the challenge you're going to face. It's not just some foreign threat like the century past, but the greatest threats to the future existence of our country are actually right here at home, beginning in our own government and the companies and actors they have deputized to do their bidding. That's what we actually need to get done. D.C. is where the threat rests most, not some foreign country. We'll take one more question.
It's our last question.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Vivek. You're an amazing person. I spoke in favor of your civic duty voting on Fox News last year when you were running.
You. All right, you look taller in person,
yes,
man.
Yeah. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Really appreciate everything you do. We talk about the America First vision for this country, and, I think a lot of people here have similar goals in mind, right? They want to start a family. They want to own a home. They want to be able to go to church, do all these things. So how do we actually make the economy, have that America First vision? How do we structure it around the family unit? And how do we make sure that the future generations have, an economic well-being that they'll actually be able to, be successful with?
Yeah, so I want to first, to your point, you brought up the civic duty voting. I want to tie that to the very first question we asked from the 19-year-old delegate who basically said that she was trying to be sidelined by actors in the Republican Party. My view is this. I do think every high school senior who graduates from high school should have to be able to pass the same civics test and take the same oath of loyalty to this country that every immigrant has to take in order to become a voting citizen, to pledge your sole allegiance to the United States of America. It's also why I'm against dual citizenship. You can't pledge allegiance to two different countries at the same time. I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. You pledge allegiance to one nation, that's the nation of which you're a citizen. On the other hand, if you've done that, once you've done that, and I'm sure the person who's doing that at the age of 19 is actually knows more about this country and pledges a greater oath of loyalty to this country than somebody who's been bumbling around for 3 generations, claiming to be a citizen of the United States of America, but doesn't know the first thing about it. So that actually works in favor of reviving and reinvigorating the next generation. But if you demonstrate through your example, your love of this country and your knowledge of it, then actually it is time to turn over the keys to younger people to be able to take action. So that's where I was coming from with that, and I stand by the same position I had during my campaign on what should be required of high school seniors. Now to your question about the economy. A lot of young people have been sold a fairy tale myth that if you work hard, you get the right grades, go to the right school, you're going to get a head start in the American dream. It hasn't worked out that way. There's 3 areas standing in the way. The first is actually the policies of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has been the quiet impediment to American progress in the last 20 years. It's a hard truth. And I'll give you one example of how, right? So the Fed views, this is a little bit technical, but that's okay. You guys can handle it, and I think it's important that you are armed with the actual technical arguments for why. The Fed, when they see rising wages, they view that as a leading indicator of inflation. The irony is anybody who knows anything about the business cycle, anybody who started a business before, knows that wages are actually the last thing to go up in the business cycle. So what they're doing is they're tightening monetary policy right into a natural downturn of the business cycle, which gives us these boom, bust, and what comes after a bust, bailout cycles. So the first thing is the Fed has been fundamentally hostile to wage growth for the bottom 99%. You could say someone on the left might talk about that, the bottom 99%. I don't care. That's still an accurate point. The Federal Reserve has been hostile to wage growth for the bottom 99%, and that includes a lot of young people. The second thing is that boom-bust bailout cycle. What does that get? That creates a closer, incestuous relationship between the largest companies in the world and the federal government. That's exactly what happened with the 2008 financial crisis. So I got my first job. I graduated from college in 2007. I got my first job at a hedge fund in New York in the fall of 2007. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. My dad faced layoffs at the GE plant in Evendale under Jack Welch's tenure. And so I don't try to rewrite or whitewash what my motivations were. My motivations were to get ahead through the system of free market capitalism and to live the American dream without apologizing for it. And you know what? I joined a hedge fund that recruited me to work there. I said, I'm going to work hard, do it the right way, play by the rules, and get ahead. Then the 2008 financial crisis hits. The firm I'm working for loses, 2/3 of its assets under management. But the people who got bailed out were people who were still taking limousines back home from work. And you know who did that? That wasn't the Democratic Party. That was the Republican Party, showing that this is a bipartisan issue. So the 2 issues that we need to address are, one is the policies of the Federal Reserve itself, put the Fed back in its place for one mandate, stabilize the U.S. dollar as a unit of measurement, period, and let go of the rest. And then number 2 is end the lobbying and the crony capitalism, which uses the regulatory state to actually create competitive advantages for the larger companies that are able to bear those regulatory costs and make it a lot harder for new startups and young entrepreneurial companies like the ones that I've started and built to actually be able to compete. You know what? If you've been in Congress, you shouldn't be able to lobby Congress for at least 10 years until after you left Congress. If you're working in Congress, you shouldn't be trading individual stocks. Doesn't make any sense for how that advances the interests of the American people. And then a big part of this comes from downsizing the scale of the federal government. 75% of those federal bureaucrats writing those regulations need to be sent back to the private sector to actually find honest work themselves, instead of impeding the growth of the private sector from where they sit today. That'll grow our economy and allow your generation to live the American dream you deserve to live. And I will say this in closing, if that was our last question. Thank you, young man. I appreciate it. Is we are taught to believe, right, that we are a nation in decline, that you're growing up into the last gasp, the last breath of the American empire of the past, the American experiment in its tail phases. I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I don't think we have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. What I see in America is what I see looking in many of you in this audience right now. I see a nation that is still a little young, actually, going through our own version of our adolescence as a country, figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again. When you go through your adolescence, maybe not you guys, but I did. We did some stupid things, okay? You lose your way a little bit. You lose your sense of who you are. But we are stronger for it when we get to the other side. And so, no, I don't think we have to be anymore this nation in decline. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. A country where I'm not going to be the guy who peddles fake optimism. I don't believe in that, right? The right Ronald Reagan thing to say is you come in here and say, it's morning in America. It's not. But I believe it can be. I don't think I could come here and tell you in good faith in response to that last question that the American dream is alive and well today. It's not. It is alive and hanging on for life support. But it can be. So that's what I'm asking you to see, is that, you know what, we still can be, and I will borrow, even though I don't tell you it's morning in America, I still think we can take something from Reagan's reference to that shining city on a hill. We still can be that shining city on a hill, that country that gives hope to the rest of the free world, that country where we will look our kids in the eye. I'll be able to look your generation in the eye and tell you that this is still the country where, no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you can achieve the maximum of your God-given potential with your own hard work and your own commitment and your own dedication. And that, you know what, you are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, it's not going to be just me or Donald Trump or anybody else. With your help, with your leadership, that is what we are going to revive to save our great country. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families. Let's save this country. And you guys are going to be the ones to do it. Thank you. God bless. And actually, I think she's here. We got a special treat for you. Good friend of mine, a fellow, what they'll say, brown face of white supremacy, whatever they joke around about. My friend Candace Owens. Let's get up here. Give it up right here.
Guys, we're going to do a selfie. Thank you so much, guys. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited. How great is Vivek, by the way? America first. Loved him as a candidate. I really do think, Vivek, you are the future of America. Stay in it. Stay in it. Don't let the media get you down. I know you won't, because they're kind of funny now. You know, I'm actually really tired today because I had to just like manhandle Piers Morgan for like an hour and a half. My brain. You know, it's such an interesting thing because I think by now, of course, you guys, I understand you guys are the cream of the crop. That's why you guys are here. But which means you probably get what's going on right now. You guys aren't falling for the media tricks. You're not believing all of the media smears and the lies and the libel. And, you know, they've called us everything. I think my personal perspective is that when you really get to the bottom of it and you become a true America first conservative in this country, you then just start collecting like Pokemon balls of things that they call you. I mean, I've been called everything. It's amazing. I've been called a white supremacist. I was like, well, that's an interesting one for me to catch, right?